at.
So last time we got through a whole one episode
Mhm.
of lore, which
Yeah,
was
but it was
episode
so
12.
dense. It was so much lore.
Yes, so much.
Quantity
so
of
much lore.
episodes, very low. Quality of episode,
Very
high.
high. And
Very
that's
significant.
That's the kind of excellence you expect here on Chatwater. So last time, after defeating the White Dragon, who had been making Caradoc its icy home, we investigated the armory and the Temple of Arathis. We met Cogman, who was taking care of Lillian Tarark, the high priestess of Arathis, who was seemingly like over 2,000 years old, and she passed the mantle to Kokenee to become the high priest of Arathis before she passed away. We then traverse a bunch of floating tiles in what seems to be the plane of ice, where we travel upwards to where Kokenee has to shoot open a door with this new gun that he has found, and we end up meeting Arathis, who names Kokenee her high priest. She thanks us for freeing her from her being locked away in the ice plane, bids us farewell, and to go prevent the awakening of the primordial titans. So that's what we did last week. This week, Matt and I have wonderfully prepared up to 6 sessions to get through. Will we get through them? Absolutely not. Will we try? You bet your butt we will. So this one, we'll start off with session 13, Calls of the Past, which happened on December 23rd, 2018. So we were still like baby party at this point. 13 sessions. We'd been almost playing a year together. Matt, do you want to go or do you want me to start?
This was us at level 7.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
It's been a time.
So
a lot of time, not a lot of levels since then.
Not a lot of levels.
Just saying, like the levels to time ratio is pretty small.
You're saying
Tim
that
Carlson.
it was 2018 then, and it's 2021 now, and we play weekly, and we've gone up 7 levels.
Yeah.
Well, we were only playing monthly at this point.
That's
to be
true.
Fair.
That's true.
Yeah, 2 levels a year. That's all you guys get.
Yeah, honestly, we won't get another level for the next 4 years.
And boy, do we appreciate them when we get them.
Tim's like, I have to end this at level 20. Okay, that's gonna take like 15 years, I think, to get there.
That's fine. Longest campaign. Do you want to go or do you want me to go, Matt?
Yeah, I'll take it away. So we leave the ice elemental plane. We are back in Caradoc. Where do we go? Starting off with a question right away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you visited the barracks, you visited the fucking the temple, you did all the things. You are now high priest. You have the stuff. She's done the blessing. That's like, if your heart gets stolen, I'll do what I can do.
Yep.
But you're still in Caradoc.
We're still in Caradoc. We're standing right at the portal.
And you don't leave. You do something in Caradoc.
We do something in Caradoc. What could it be?
I mean, technically, you've already visited a bar. Like, because maybe Callie hasn't discovered her love of dive bars just yet, but like...
Oh no, that was well and truly... that was well and truly ingrained in Callie before we met her.
Do you go to an old temple of Arath? No, that you guys just came from Arath.
Been there, yeah.
Whatever the equivalent of like a library or like the governor's like, you want records. Neppy wants them lores.
We end up going to the palace.
Yes. So Caradoc
was
Governor's Mansion, Palace. There we go. We got it.
Caradoc was the seat of the Caraxian Empire, so it makes sense that there would be a palace here.
So we head over, and as we enter, we see tapestries depicting the royal family. They appear to have some variety of a magical essence on them, and they depict a family of humans. And we investigate around. We have a good look around the palace. We find some gold, dice, and a pipe.
What type of dice? Like, we're talking like just
like
D6s
like a
or
full set of D&D dice, D20.
Can our characters play D&D?
Some excellent fairy dragon dice.
Yes, they were just like a set of gaming dice that they found in the palace. There was not much there. Most of it had been lost to ice and ruin, but yeah.
Ice don't get the dice. That's what we always say. We always say that.
We've said that. I mean, you've never heard it, but Sean does say it a lot.
We've got new mugs coming.
Just don't get the
limited
dice.
edition.
Okay, let's keep going.
We'll never stop. Oh yeah, 6 episodes. Sorry.
Back on track. We then investigate the manor house. This is not a home per se. More, it seems to be a government building. All the books in the library and around the house are frozen and waterlogged and don't appear to convey a lot of information, sadly. Through our investigation, however, we find a trap door down to a bare office with a desk. There are 4 candlesticks with symbols.
Or is it more God puzzles?
It is
It's-
not.
It is a puzzle.
Yes, but it is not God symbols.
Guys, there was so much puzzles
yeah,
Saturday night. You solved the
was-
puzzle, I assume. Don't make me do
it
another
was-
puzzle.
So there
Was
was
it magic type puzzles? Or
so there was
symbols?
4 candles, and on the candles one of them had a human, one of them had a candle, one of them had a sundial, and one of them had a moon. I'm not gonna make you solve this puzzle. We don't have
Don't
time.
make me solve it. You solved the puzzle. We have
So-
6 episodes. You throwing this
so
puzzle shit at me?
you
I want
had
to know
to-
the lore.
You had to light the candles in the order of how, like, shortest to longest. So what was like a candle has the shortest lifespan, then a sundial, then a moon, then a human life. Took us like half a session to figure that out. But once we did that, Matt, continue on.
After figuring out the puzzle, we hear a soft grinding noise, releasing a box that was set into the floor. It lifts out, and 2 handles reveal themselves. The air in the box is stale, but the contents are preserved. There are 2 stones, which are sending stones. A large book, which is bound with the title of The History of Caradoc. A map of the Caraxian Empire extending down towards Cinderfall and across all of Wolfar. And includes, Em, you're going to have to help me with the word.
Athal's Calamity.
Athal's Calamity.
Yeah. So this is basically a thing of like, okay, so we're finding some stuff that has been like locked away, not ruined by the ice. And
Mhm.
this map of the Caraxian Empire shows like what I think this was a key to us was that like, oh, this was big.
Yeah.
Like this wasn't just located here in Caradoc or even just on Wolfar. It was the entire continent of Wolfar, including this like island thing that we've never been to as Blackwater, Athal's Calamity, as well as all the way down into Cinderfall. And now we're also figuring out that they have outposts. Like there was, stuff on the way to Manta. There was the one up here in Garyang. There was,
Mhm.
the stuff in the Amonkhet Peninsula. So there's Caraxian stuff everywhere. It's like a real like Roman Empire situation, just very sprawling, very expansive.
And we've ended up, as we've said, finding a lot of these outposts by chance later on, just stumbling upon them.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot to find, wasn't there?
There's a lot to find.
I really want to go to Athal's Calamity one day. I think there's something big there, but that's just me.
Well, side quest.
Side quest.
It's a
There
joke.
are no
Tim doesn't
side
do
quests
side
with
quests.
Tim Carlson. Yeah.
So after that, we investigate the rest of the city. It is relatively quiet and empty. We
I just need to
climb-
know, are these
Yeah.
the sending stones that Callie then would eventually use nonstop to call her wife? Okay.
Yeah. Yes, these are those sending stones. Yes. Exceedingly old, ancient
yes.
sending stones used to strictly call her wife.
So like really old, like Nokia's, like
100%.
flip phones.
So
That's
reliable.
why they never stop working.
This
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
reliable.
Never
Will
runs
work
out of
anywhere.
battery.
Mercury proof.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised it doesn't work interplanar. I mean, if anything would, it would be a Nokia. Especially like the old ones where you could pull the antenna out.
Yes. It's a
You
really
need
good
that
service.
boost.
There are people listening to this right now being like, phones had antennas you could pull out? What?
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It flipped.
Well, it was to accommodate the rotary, because like if the antenna was
Absolutely.
down, it made it difficult to
Yes.
get your whole
Well, see, you
finger in
pulled the
there.
antenna out and it was a long string, and then you would tie it to someone else's antenna phone, and then you could speak as long as the string was tight.
But the problem was like you had to get the mouthpiece and then the earpiece, the sort of the 2 different horns.
Yeah, yeah,
and-
yeah.
Exactly. It
That's
was
essentially
best
that's
ones.
essentially how sending stones work. It's great.
one long string that you drag behind
Okay,
you the
keep going,
entire
Matt.
time.
Keep going. We have more lore. More lore. More lore.
Now, the
Okay,
problem was they
so-
were coal powered, so you need to sort of rev it up a few times.
Guys, you've just described landlines. That's all. That's the only thing you've done is you've just described old landlines.
No, I've mixed in some. Anyways,
What the string that attached? That's
no,
that's a telephone line.
Coal-powered phones they have to rev up. I'm working in some old school like first gen automobiles. Like we're going into
Okay,
like industrial
okay.
revolution,
Okay.
good times.
Okay, so we
Because
leave
when
the
the
city.
Cotton Jenny got onto the scene, Nokia really revolutionized. No, okay.
We climb out of the city through the Mother's Eye and make our way across the ice, where we ended up fighting a Remoraz.
What we
Oh,
didn't
I hate
fight.
those.
What we didn't fight on the way across, we ended up fighting there.
we decide to travel towards Shinkik rather than travel to Fawe Tavar. And when we
So
arrive,
you're done with Caradoc.
Yeah.
You're like, we seen it, been there, got the T-shirt, we're gone.
Well, and also we had known that Soren Brightwing, who was in
Mhm.
Fawe Tavar, was basically like, just go investigate the Mother's Eye. That's all I
Yeah.
needed to do and report back on what the light was. So we were like, okay. And then we were
Side
feeling
quest done.
Side quest done. We were feeling kind of like we were low on supplies. So we're like, Shinkik is closer. Let's go to Shinkik. We'll supply up, and then we'll go meet Soren in Fawe Tavar.
Because it was far way too far.
Ha!
Wow.
You get to Shinkik. I've heard so
Yeah.
much about it.
Yeah.
It's a rough town.
Shinkik is the worst.
It was the worst.
The worst. Shinkik.
No, it's just Garyang general.
Garyang has now taken the title of the worst. Okay, go, Matt, go.
Yeah. I'm sure you guys had talked about this before, but we went to Fawe Tavar first, and the elves were all like terrible
Snooty
and
assholes.
super snooty and super racist to the gnomes, and we were like, God, this is the worst. Shinkik's gonna be so much better, and we showed up, and Shinkik was the worst.
They were so rude to us.
They were.
Why was it the worst? Describe it vividly.
They like Fawe Tavar was like, man, those gnomes are terrible, and they're like so rude and so like they're just like gnomes are like a shitty species.
And you guys were like, these
and we're
guys
like,
are so wrong.
That's racism. Like you can't say that about a people's. And then we go there, and the gnomes were so shitty.
They were so arrogant and so like they didn't treat non-gnomes like people. They were just like they didn't speak to us. They only spoke to Yana.
Yeah. It was terrible.
It was
that was the original place that we were like, it's the worst. Shinkik is the worst.
Shinkik.
Yeah. We moved on eventually to the, Earth Elemental Plane being the worst, but Shinkik was the OG.
Yeah.
So we arrive at the perimeter of the town, and we see patrols of gnomes with tents set up. Some are repairing primitive versions of oaken bolters we had seen in Caradoc.
So like primitive versions of so we were fighting the dragon in Caradoc, and we had seen these like oaken bolters, which were essentially like giant you could fire
ballistas?
giant ballistas that you could fire like a spear off of, and we used them to kill the dragon. And they were these primitive versions, and we're like, this is just more thing of like, why is there stuff from Caradoc, this ancient underground city that we have has been essentially lost to time? Why is there stuff of this here? It was just more kind of like pinging going on.
Yeah, it's so, this was like the big mystery at the time, was why because we had never seen things like guns at any point in the game before coming to Shinkik. It was, why is this small gnome town like so technologically far ahead of everything else? And we had no idea. So so they are, as we arrive to the town, they are actually fighting somebody. Who are they fighting?
Elementals. It's got to be elementals. No. Well,
was it more
the
of
elves?
the elves?
Yeah.
They
I
were
mean, if they're
fighting
having a
elves of
fucking
Fawe
race
Tavar.
war.
Essentially,
Like,
yeah.
Well, we had sort of thought that at the time, that like that is 100% what it was. It was just the gnomes
We're
hate the elves.
arrogant gnomes versus snooty elves. Like
this is
bickering.
that was as far as we'd gotten at this time. So we got lost. We help who we can. Neppy is able to do some healing on people and give some funeral rites to those who are dead. And later in the evening, as they're camping, Neppy and Kokenee have a long chat discussing his newfound religion. She asks him about his heart that he'd mentioned, with what Arathis has said, and he discusses that he's sort of gives the basics of the Kokenee background for the first time.
Ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had tried to keep it pretty close to my chest up to this point, because Kokenee would have imagined the moment he started telling people hey, this is my deal, people would be like, oh, cool. I'm gonna go, but that nice meeting you.
So this sounds like the first sort of personal conversation that these two have had. So Em, break this down for it. What spurred that on for Neppy? What was the?
Well, she
What was
definitely
the?
approached him about it.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's.
So I think something that Nepi saw in that moment was like she has, as the high priestess of her order, she's like has seen so many people in the temple have their like coming to faith moment. That is like, like you have either, like it's different, of course, with the, Tempe Philenis, because you're essentially dropped off on the steps and then you are raised in the order, and you are raised to follow Nephthisiket. So a very different way, but I think everyone, she understands very much like how even though you're brought up in something, it's your choice whether you choose to believe it or you choose to ascribe to it. So she's seeing Kokenee have this profound moment of coming to his religion, to being gifted this this title from his goddess, and she's like, oh my gosh, everyone I know who has had this moment has had 12, 13 years of life lived in a religion around people who have also been in this religion, and he is doing this alone. He has no support. He has no one who understands what that's like. He doesn't understand what this process is like. And she's like, I have to help him. I have to help shepherd him through this process, because obviously I don't know what it's like to follow Arathis. That's not my path. But if it is his path, I can talk to him about faith. I can talk to him about belief, and I can talk to him about, what it means to follow the path of someone else, which of course he knew very well. Like, we didn't know at this point, like, of course he knew very well following Velsum, but my sense with Nepi is like, no, Nepi would see him lost and be like, I can help. You have to go on this journey yourself, your journey towards faith, but that doesn't mean I can't be here to support you and encourage you. And she was also exceedingly curious to be like, what is going on with your chest? What does this mean? Like, please tell me about this. I am the person who is pretty responsible for keeping this party alive. I feel like I should know if there's something that I need to help save you from. So they have that kind of big discussion.
Yeah. And Kokenee in a lot of ways is, as said, like pretty lost at this point, being like, I don't have any of the tools to do this religion thing, and so Nepi's help is deeply appreciated. And it was sort of a decision point for him of like, do I stay completely closed off from these people like I have in the past, or do I open myself up a little bit?
Now, let me also just ask, because it sounds like on like a meta level that because this sounds like a real like character growth kind of moment, and by the sounds of it, most of the Chatwater stuff we've gone through is quite like, we do this, we solve this, we talk to this. It sounds like as a party, this unnamed party at this point, because you're not even Blackwater yet, it sounds like there hasn't even been a lot of this like interplayer moments of like quiet reflection. So this sort of doubles as like a first time for these characters and kind of a first time for the party.
Totally.
I think
that's so exciting, because now we love that shit. We do it all the time.
It's a huge symbol of our development as a party, and I think a lot of like this moment comes in many ways from like the fact that we're role playing like this comes not exclusively, but a little bit from Adam joining the party, who is one of the most serious, hardcore role players that I've ever met.
Great.
And so like we were, we had played D&D for like, a year on and off at this point, or 2 years. But not all of us came from the background of like, when we play D&D, we role play as hard as we can. And some of us did and some of us didn't as much, but having Adam in the party who was vehemently looking for that
and committed to Tauren as a character,
and brought that to the table, made all of us basically, once you saw him come in, all of us doubled down into that.
And it's like, we're playing up now. It's like, and I think that goes double for like myself as well, like having had Adam as a DM before, and like knowing the style of table he creates, which is wonderful and amazing. And having him come in. This was the first time I'd ever played with Adam as a player, so it was really cool to see him step into that space too, and you know, step into a space where he was, because he knew all of us and he just fell into step with the party. And of course there was some growing and adjustment, but like we were still learning. I think Matt hit it totally on the head. We were still learning how to not just play our characters mechanically, but our own character's narrative at this point. And the role play had been, you know, it wasn't always as beautiful as it is now, but it was clunky, it was sparse, it was, there would be good stuff with NPCs. No, totally okay. But there would be a lot of great stuff from like us to Tim, as there often always is in the beginning part of a campaign. But it took a lot of having Adam come into the party to drive a lot of that inter-party role play. And I think this was a really cool moment. I think absolutely where Matt and I took a step where it's like, okay, here is a moment for these two characters, has nothing to do with Adam, but it's like these two characters are having a moment of connection. Yeah. These two moments, they have a shared common ground at this point, where Neppy had been pretty, like, very different from the Neppy you see now. Like, she's very much a sense of propriety, very like hard line about a lot of things, and she's like, what is my purpose here if not to, like, of course, yes, I have my prophecy, because I think one of the big things that I can see, this is, yes, of course, a huge moment of growth for Kokenee. It's also a huge moment of growth for Neppy, because Neppy's taking investment in these people. They're not just helping her further her goal towards her prophecy anymore. She's like, I see someone who is in need of a specific kind of help that only I can offer in this point in his life. And he's someone I've been traveling with for a while. I trust him. He saved my life. There's a mutuality here. I can help. So she invested in the party and invested through him.
And I was just gonna say, we were like, as a party, like dipping our toes into the swimming pool of roleplay, and slowly we're doing the thing where, like, you know, you get up to your hips and then you're like, oh, it's cold, and then you finally take the step in and all that sort of stuff. And Adam just ran by us and jumped in the pool.
And we were like, okay, I guess the water's fine.
Yeah.
I remember my first session playing with Sean. Sean had played quite extensively, and we played for the first time, and I thought I had like done some really good preparation on Kale before we sat down for the first time. And Adam was our DM, and he says, "Do you guys want to introduce yourself?" And Sean just came in like, he's like, "Yep, I'll go first." And he just came in with his character, and he immediately started like in character voice. And there was a moment where I was like, this is like the first time I've ever played D&D. There was a moment where I went, oh shit, we're doing voices?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. Oh, geez.
Neppy barely
I
had
gotta
a voice
think of
at
an
this point.
accent I can do. I was like, I don't know accents. I was like, the only accent I know is where I come. Okay, I'm going South African. That's the only one I know how to do.
You hadn't planned to make Kale South African?
No, you just started an accent, and I was like, accents. I can't do a convincing British accent. I'll go South African. And then I was like, okay,
so good.
That. And I think that's such a wonderful microcosm of how your character is influenced by the table you play with, right? And it's like, I think something that came up for, you know, I can speak for myself in this moment, but like, as I said, Neppy didn't have her accent that she had at this point. I had been testing out a couple things, and it started off as more kind of like proper British, and then I was watching The Crown at this point, and then was like, I started feeling more comfortable and started stepping into Neppy a bit more as I played her, and the increased emotionality specifically prompted by like these moments. This moment as like one of the first ones was like, okay, Emma, you can be comfortable here. You have a group of people around you who are going to support your decisions, and you know, have space to just like engage and play and have fun. So this moment was really crucial for me as a role player, and also Neppy as a character. It was really cool.
So what was this actual conversation?
Well, I just last little thing. Kokenee doesn't have an accent, because when we showed up, I had planned to have an accent. It was going to be like a far deeper version of Kokenee's accent. And we had just sat down for the table for the first time ever. It was a New Year's Eve game, and I was like, I don't feel comfortable doing an accent. I'm not ready for this. And so I didn't. And that's where that came from. And then by the time I was comfortable doing it, we were like 2 years later, and I'm like, I'm not changing his accent now.
No.
So-
And we also had to play with baby volume.
Yeah.
Because
You're
I've
also
heard you
playing
play a lower voice. Was the intended voice for Kokenee Buckwild basically Mistaker from the Fenrilic arc?
Faster than Mistaker, because Mistaker's very like slow.
But then,
And-
so Kokenee Buckwild might have been like this guy who's like,
Yeah.
I am Indiana
The-
Jones, and I'm excited to
Love
be
it.
here.
I was building a one-shot character, so the plan would have been to have a Indiana Jones knockoff.
Yeah.
And he would have had something like this.
I love
Oh,
Um,
there's a little swagger in it. This guy talks
Yeah,
his hips.
but so we were doing I one wasn't comfortable, and two we were doing baby volume, and as letters can attest,
Yeah.
the accent just changes when you're whispering all the time.
Letters was
Yes.
supposed to be way more John Wayne, but I can't do John Wayne, not at like full voice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now we have letters.
Oh, it's perfect.
Sean used to do this thing all the time when we started playing, and it's a great thing to do if you're playing with new players and you're more comfortable. Is whenever you meet an NPC, you as the established player engage with the NPC, and then you turn around to your player who's not comfortable and you go, "What do you think?" And then you're like, you build this huge repertoire with the DM, and everyone's sitting by, and they're like, "Oh, this is really good. This is really entertaining." And then they turn around and they all look at you and they go, "What do you think?" And you're like,
Such good D&D.
"I
So
don't.
good.
Oh shit! Now I have to do that. Okay."
Yeah.
And Emma, you had mentioned that Adam knew everybody. This was my first time meeting Adam.
Was it? I thought you'd met him before. No? Okay.
No, because like
Okay.
me and like Jan wasn't friends with Adam outside of D&D.
That's right.
So the first time I met Adam was when he showed up to play with us.
Oh my gosh.
And you were like, "Hey, we're bringing like this new guy in. It'll be like super fun." And I'm like, "Oh, like I don't know. Like I'm barely comfortable playing with the people that I already am. Like we're developing his characters, all that. We've got a good thing going." And then Adam shows up, and I'm like, "Okay, this will be fun.
This
Yeah,
guy's
nice.
cool.
I'm down.
This
This will
guy's
be
great.
this guy's cool." And I think that's attesting to how talented Adam is as a player.
Yeah.
Is he didn't know a bunch of us like me, and
Yeah.
he didn't know Jen very well, and that didn't change how he played. He was
No.
playing his character regardless of who was there.
Mhm.
Which
Do
makes
love the
him
fact-
so fun to play with new players, like even nowadays, is that he's playing a full character regardless.
Yeah.
I do love the fact that I would say not all of us, but I'd say like a good half of us met through playing D&D first before we became friends
Yes.
outside.
Yes.
Like, and I think there's something kind of super cool about that, is the fact that like you get to know each other in a sort of a space where you can be anything and anyone, and then after there's that trust already established, it seems much less daunting to introduce your real self than the self that
Yanis,
you've
that's
made
how
up.
you and I met.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's how I
We
met
s-
you. That's how I met Len. That's how I met Jen. The first
Yeah.
time I really ever talked to Matt was as a D&D. That's how I met Sean. Like most of you I met like playing, role-playing games,
Ah,
which is
so good.
super cool.
So good.
There-
D&D, you fight dragons and make lifelong friends.
Absolutely. Your best
There-
friends.
I think with all three of you, there was a time where I knew your D&D character better than I knew you.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually, I feel like we could probably do a whole Chatwater episode of like that moment of transition from
How to make
D&D
friends
friend
with the people
to
you're
friend.
you play D&D with? Yeah.
Because
We-
like
guys, we-
everyone has stories like that. And
Also,
like,
we have so much lore to get through. We're not even
We gotta
done
go, we
this
gotta go, we gotta
episode.
go.
yeah,
gotta
so what
keep
was that
going.
conversation even about and stuff? Sort of.
Oh, that conversation, it almost just, it started with like, Kokenee was, if I remember correctly, Kokenee was sitting and he was just kind of getting ready for bed, and Neppy was like, "Do you have a minute? Like, how are you doing with this?" Like
He's mending his shirt.
He's mending his shirt, and it's just like, "How are you doing with this? How is this sitting with you? Tell me about what is your experience with faith? How like,
That's great.
and saying like essentially just offering her, because she knows nothing about him at this point, and is essentially just like, we've been traveling together for a while, like I know I've talked a bit about my religion, but if obviously we're not of the same religion now, but I would be happy to always be here as a support for you. As you have those moments where you will come to crisis with faith. You will have your moments of uncertainty, but know that you can come to me anytime and talk about that kind of stuff. It was cool. It was a great conversation. It was lovely. I remember leaving that conversation being like, wow, roleplay is really fun. Like, it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, they had talked about, she had been like very curious about like, she like, and Neppy is very much a like, doesn't touch people and like isn't close to people. Had her whole life had been like, I can't get close to people. And she was like, can I see that? Meaning the plate in his chest.
Oh.
She's like, can I see? Because like, what are we dealing with here? What did she mean? And Kokenee just like basically pulled back the shirt, which I think was a big moment for him of like, because she would have seen all the scars. And I think Matt and I talked about it afterwards, and he was like, it was almost like Kokenee, and Matt, you please correct me if I'm wrong, but it was almost like Kokenee was waiting for her to flinch and waiting for her to pull back and be disgusted or shocked or something like that, and she didn't. She was just like, tell me about it. What do we know? How can I help? So just kind of offering herself as a person to be steadfast with him as if he needed. Yeah. So that's how these two kind of started. Just a conversation. It was cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. We're not even at the end of this episode yet.
I know. I just assume,
ahead,
you know,
Sean,
because
go
we know how it ends. And so
Sure.
I suspect there's very little flirting in that
There was
thing.
no flirting in that whole
that's
thing.
and like you as characters and players are both just like, oh, what a pleasant conversation with this comrade. Okay.
Well, it's like for Kokenee, like he was like what he was looking for at this point, not looking for, but like what he needed as a character to develop was like step one, moderate humanization. like to be a person who didn't constantly think that everybody else, if they knew him, would just try to get away from him. And so things like flirting and relationships and the possibility that a human being would, or a humanoid, I guess, would not like dip the moment that they learned about him at all. That was so foreign that concepts like flirting just weren't there. So this moment was one that was like, it was the first tiny baby step out of a shell that he was put in.
From this acorn, the mighty oak shall grow.
And I think on the other hand of that, here you have Neppy, who is treated like all the tieflings being oddities in and even like the only thing she knew about being out in the world was what she'd experienced, with people essentially giving her a very wide berth, looking at her as if she's exceedingly strange. She's always out of place. And knowing that she is, or being taught for her whole life, that you can't make attachments to people because you need to be able to do your job. Because if the time comes, you need to be able to do what her grace says that you have to do. So here's Neppy taking a moment to be like, maybe not even consciously, but just being like, oh, I can have more. I can have connection with people. She can make some sort of platonic connection with someone. Also someone of the opposite sex who is like, she's had very little experience with men because she's grown up around women her whole life. And like for the longest time, I thought Neppy was ace. I was like, Neppy's ace. I was like, Neppy has no interest or any sort of and like ace, and also aromantic. Like she was ace and arrow. I was like, because Neppy has no desire for any sort of, physical intimate connection with another person, because everything has been taught is that like sex and intimacy is transactional at best, and that it's just like that's just something people do, and okay, great, sure, good for you.
And and something that's like really I think is important to put like where Matt was at this point was that I am certain, and me and Emma have talked about this at some point. I am certain that that is something that Emma had said in the first session that we played.
Yeah, I had been pretty straight up about it.
That Neppy was like some variety of like she probably didn't say like aromantic or anything like that, but she said stuff that sort of alluded to it.
Or like didn't understand relationships.
Yeah.
Like she would like, and you know, that had been something I talked about with Tim. It's like Neppy doesn't like and we'll talk about this in a minute. Neppy didn't know what marriage was.
I remember that.
She had no idea what marriage was. And like, so this moment is Neppy basically saying, oh, I get to have a friendship with someone, a connection with someone. And this is on mutual grounds. It's over something we have in common, faith. Wonderful. Great.
And just super quick, sorry. And so for me, Matt, as a player at this point, my understanding is that Neppy is not and would never be interested in this sort of thing. So it's not even as a player something that comes to my mind. I'm like, oh, what a nice, pleasant conversation that's being had between two people who are becoming friends.
Yeah.
Sorry, Yanis.
Go ahead, Yanis.
No, I was just going to ask is like you say you thought that, you know, Neppy was going to be ace. Do you think that there's a part of Neppy that thought she was ace until she met Kokenee? Like, do you think she was like, this is what I've been taught, like from everything I've been taught, and I haven't ever met anyone that I'm interested in. I must be just not interested. And then you got to know him, and then you were like, oh, okay.
What are those?
Like, you know, what are these feelings?
What is this? Yeah, no, I think that's totally hit the nail on the head. It's like you're not allowed to have, not that you're not allowed, but it's not done.
Yeah.
Like there's never anything written anywhere in the priestess's history about love, about connection, about any sort of romantic partnership. And I can imagine stuff like that happens at Philenis all the time, but it's not talked about. And it's kept secret. Because I can imagine that there are, you know, multitudes of, you know, of the priestesses or acolytes there who form deep, intimate, romantic bonds with each other. But it's not something that's ever, you know, talked about or, you know, certainly not promoted. Because my idea of Neppy at the beginning, I'm like, oh, she's like a sequestered, cloistered nun, essentially. And not that she's taken any sort of vow of chastity, but it's just not something that she's ever been like, why? It was almost a question of why would I do that? What purpose does that serve me in serving her grace?
That's one thing I find really interesting about Neppy and Kokenee's relationship is that, you know, I know that we're not like the game that you guys play is not typically one where we go into sort of like the physical bedroom aspect of relationships, but it's an interesting thing because like the relationships that Letters had that we've come across with people he's had relationships with, they felt very like there was a large physical component to it. And then like, you know, Kokenee and Neppy, like we never talk about it, so it's hard to know, and I'm not really asking, but it feels like it's not the most important thing in their relationship. Like it just feels like it's like they're such good friends, and they have such a unique bond that it's not like it just feels very different. Like it feels like they get excited holding hands.
Yanis, you say that, but you don't have to share a house with them. No light gets in that room, but sound travels surprisingly. It's the thing.
I think building off on what you're saying, Yanis, Neppy and Kokenee's, the foundation of their relationship is companionship.
Yeah.
And understanding and trust.
Like if you told me that Neppy was still ace and she just found a partner that she loved, like I would still be like, oh, that makes 100% sense. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying the way the relationship is built like someone who never put that at the forefront of establishing connections with other people. Like the physical was never like the primary reason that she built relationships with people. So it doesn't take the forefront of it. Whereas if you look at like the relationships that Letters has had, like there's like a lot of like flirting. There's a lot of like overt physicality to it. Yeah, it's just an interesting. I guess it's the sort of the homeschool nature of both of them, and the sort of the fact that they grew up not super well socialized.
And something I think that really will play into their relationship as we kind of move on and see it develop is that they are the one of the biggest things that trust allows them to do is be playful with each other, like joking and teasing each other, and like that sense of just like falling into step with each other, a comfortable oh, here's my inner therapist going, it's secure attachment. It's just secure attachment. Like they are each other's primary attachment figure. That it's just like, this is the person I go to if I am, we are in unsafe situations all the time. And this is the start of that attachment forming, that it's like Neppy essentially offering, say like, hey, I'm safe. I'm safe. And I can be a safe place for you when you're feeling lost and uncertain. And yes, it doesn't, like, there is a moment where for me as Emma, I was like, oh, Neppy has feelings for him. I was like, what? Like, that was a discovery moment for me. And we'll talk about that, Chatwater. We'll get there. Like, we'll talk about that moment. And I was like, I remember talking to Matt afterwards. I was like, I think Neppy's got some feels. I don't know. I was like, I don't know how this plays out, but I think Neppy has some feels. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So
this specific discussion actually gets very interesting, I think, like 2 or 3 episodes from now.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not going to get there tonight.
We're not going to get there tonight.
We won't.
But we'll finish off this episode, and then maybe we can rip through one more. So I'll just finish off the end of the episode. So before bed that night, after going at warp speed, after have Neppy and Kokenee have this conversation, she had remembered what Arathis had said, like, go pray to your goddess with this implement. So she puts the gun out and she incorporates it as part of her prayer routine. And she's like, well, here I am praying to you, your grace, incorporating this machine I don't know how to use into this, and I have been told to do this. So any guidance would be great. Tim made me roll a religion check. I rolled a natural 20 on my religion check. And the shard in the gun starts glowing. And it glows like this, like, purple.
It glows a different color, don't it?
It does. It's a purpley black color, which is the same color as Neppy's magic. And apparently, I didn't know this at the time, but if I hadn't rolled a natural 20, the gun wouldn't have worked.
Ooh.
But Tim was like, yeah, you rolled a natural 20, so it works. And so then I got the stats for the Doom Tube, which is what my gun is called. And it deals, whereas Kokenee's gun deals radiant, Neppy's gun deals necrotic damage. So
I mean, it really wouldn't have mattered because you almost never use it, much to my disappointment.
It's because it's like I can fire one shot and it takes me a whole action to reload it because I don't have the bonus action reload feature that Kokenee does.
Yeah, you reload it after the fight. You draw it, bang, and then you go.
Exactly.
And that's literally just what I did in the last fight. I was like,
yeah, and you killed it on every possible level.
My spells are just so much more powerful.
Yeah. I think the difference is that Kokenee, because he's a fighter, gets 2 attacks.
Yeah.
And so in one action he can fire and then second attack reload.
And now with your bonus action attack you can fire again. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But like action economy with clerics without that becomes very clunky to use a gun.
Super.
You should just get it turned into an automatic.
But apparently this is the reason that only clerics can use guns. Is because I rolled a natural 20. If I hadn't rolled a natural 20, Kokenee would have been probably the only one to be able to use a gun. So now guns are cleric weapons. It's great. Do we have time for me to race through one more?
How much time do we have?
Yeah, let's do it. Screw it. Let's do it. Okay, so we'll do session 14, which is called The Last Caraxian. Which strap yourself.
Sorry, are you? This is a big one. Okay, let's see how we can go.
Let's see if we can
This is a super important episode.
This is a super important episode.
If it's a super important episode, do we want to blaze? Guys, we're our own bosses here. We don't have to roll through it.
Hold on. Let me check with the producer. He says it's okay if we don't do it tonight.
I mean, Matt, if you want to, because you're like 2 to 3 episodes,
but
this gets really interesting.
But this is my pitch too. It's like, because this is like a really big moment for Kokenee, I feel like I feel like we should probably have Matt around for a couple more chat waters
That's
if
what I'm
he's
saying.
down. Yeah,
Yes.
Matt,
just come
if you
be
wanna
with us
come
on
back.
this. Yeah.
Fine, I'll stay. You've talked me into it.
Maybe we'll just
I'll
get-
talk more about Kokenee.
Maybe we'll just get
Really twisted my
faster.
arm.
Guys, we only got through one episode of Lore today. Fuck.
How much time do we have left? Are we like out of
I
time?
really thought Matt, Sean and I were good at
You were
derailing,
good.
but it turns out that Matt's all we really needed to slow it down.
Oh, no, because here's the thing. When it's just you and I, like, there's the trifecta of like one of us derails, one of us recenters, and then Emma does the important stuff.
I just like lock you in
When
with the lore.
the weird thing that happens here is what usually happens with us is where we amp each other up and derail. Now it's Em and Matt revving each other up with like digging into like how it feels and
Yes.
like the meaning of
I mean,
it.
you're
And
not
we're over
helping
here
Sean
like
because you're just like, please let me ask you this question. What's this question?
Yeah.
What's this question? And we're all just like, yes, more.
it's too juicy.
It's too juicy.
So good.
This is a juicy time for the party, and it's a really cool time for like. This is when
Okay.
we're just starting to see the story coming together.
This is
Yeah.
Here's constructive criticism moving forward. Don't talk about puzzles. Don't ask me how you solve the puzzles, so we can spend more time talking about that
Okay,
interpersonal
okay.
character
Listen, Sean,
growth.
Sean, it wasn't the puzzle that made us only get through one session tonight.
it.
Look,
It-
last
yeah.
time we
Yeah.
spent like 20 minutes. Like I enjoyed it at the time, doing like Dora the Explorer, like Pantheon mode. As I'm like, I fucking Vecna. Like that's great for me in the moment. But like,
No,
we're
no,
here
no.
for the lore and the connection.
But like, it's because we've been spending so much time talking about the previous episodes because they're
Yeah.
also so lore juicy. We're
They're
just like,
so good.
I know.
All right, well, when it rains, it pours. We're fucking.
Yeah.
It's in the rainy season. Let's just enjoy this monsoon.
Absolutely.
This is a real like the other thing about this is that this was a real Neppy moment, these episodes, where and by that I mean like she before this was like, you can call me Nepentha.
Oh.
And they
like-
would call her Neppy and she'd be like, my name is Nepentha.
And like these are where the episodes where she started being like time of building allowing herself to build attachments with these people.
Mhm.
Moving to like the like you not saying that we could call her Neppy, but stopping correcting us
Yes.
every time we chose to do as such.
I want to know who came up with Neppy.
Oh, great.
we remember?
question.
Because if you didn't want people to call it, you wouldn't have been like
It
you wouldn't
wasn't-
have used it.
It wasn't me.
I honestly think it might have been Adam because Torin had a hard time pronouncing Nepentha when he couldn't really speak common. And I think it just came out Neppy. Or it might have been Yana like very sweetly shortening Neppy's name or Nepentha's name to Neppy. And then once it started, everyone started doing it, and then Tim started doing it, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, I
guess.
think it was before this arc. So I don't think it was Torn, but I have no recollection of who
No.
started it. But
I
someone
think we
said
can
it.
leave this to chat. Hey, Lore
Yeah.
Club, you
Make it up.
decide.
You
First,
decide.
get a
Oh.
person to use Neppy.
Who's your pitch
Let's
on who,
retcon it.
on who it started? Yeah, I honestly don't remember. I honestly don't remember. But yeah, she got used to it. This is Neppity. This is Neppy like.
I like Neppity.
Neppity.
Neppity's a fun one.
But the nickname that Aftish gives her, Penny.
Penny.
When I dropped that, I collectively when Tim dropped that, I collectively watched all your faces be like, like somebody
Did you
else
come
go.
up with that, Em?
New
I-
nickname just dropped. Check it out.
Just drop. Well, Tim and I were talking about like because this was the first like when we went to Philenis, when we first started streaming. Tim is like, what is her and Aftish's relationship like? And I would be like, it would be like sisters. It would be like because they showed up at the temple at around the same time. They've both like been not like star pupils, but just like quite responsible and doing their thing. And it would be Tish and Penny. And I was like, I think she calls her Penny. And I think that Neppy calls her Tish. And I would be like, because that would, for me, like, would be like the moment that it's like, oh yeah, Neppy has this bond with Aftish as a sisterly thing, but sees that as an anomaly. and like as a relationship of like circumstance of like, okay, we're both in this together. Hade both expects so much of us. Like we rely on each other that like, please let me look at your notes, or like, can you cover for me if I'm not going to be at prayers this morning? Not that either of them would have missed prayers, but thinking that she could have, and then we see that like her having this relationship, you know, being called Neppy by the party. It's like this mutuality of like, oh, these people care about me enough to give me a nickname, something that I thought only Oftish did, and also I am okay with this. I'm okay with the fact that you are seeking closeness with me. So yeah, it's just two homeschool kids learning how to socialize with people outside of the people they grew up with, which is very cute. Guys, we only did one session of lore. We have to get through more next time. We have
Absolutely.
to.
We'll see what happens.
We do, but next one is
Oh, such
next
a
one-
good one.
next one might be one of the best. The next two sessions might be some of the best D&D we've ever played.
Yeah, we've got what, the last Caraxian and the
Yeah.
trial of Nissa Timbers.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Because we know Nissa.
When
We
you
know Nissa.
do
Boy,
know
do
Nissa
we know
now.
Nissa.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm excited. Come back next